Hi, everyone, and welcome back to our Motivation and Mindset Monday, where I can't wait to take you through this week's topic, which is stop trying to manage your time so much and instead look at life management. This is one of the brilliant philosophies that former business magnate, I guess you would call him, Peter Drucker, taught to many mentees and people over the years, is that we all get the same amount of time per day. And we're going to start to break that down and look at that specifically. So if we all get the same amount of time per day, and yes, we need to have a schedule, how are some people able to get so much done in a given day or week or month or year, while others seem to just be playing catch up, or they never really get started in the first place when they have that time? And by the way, every single moment of every single day is being filled with something. So we all do have that time, and our time's always being filled, and for the most part, we're always busy. So how is it that we're able to then move forward faster towards our goals? Because the more people I speak with, the more people I realize that when you figure out what it is that you want, whether it be wellness-based or the right relationship or the right career or the right body, the spiritual-based practice that you're looking for, when you figure that out, you want it right away. You want it that day. But, like all goals worth achieving, it doesn't necessarily work that way. You may be able to put it out into the universe, but I'll tell you this, I don't think you've crystallized yet quite what you want. So there is a little bit more time to develop that. We'll be talking about that today. But even more so, it's going back to what is this whole thing of time management versus life management? And I did a previous podcast. I will try to embed that or link that up today at stephencabral.com/1711. That's today's show notes. stephencabral.com/1711. And it goes the breakdown, meaning, and really, I would say detailing. Everyone has about an extra 6 hours or so per day that isn't being used to the best of their ability. Now, some people, of course, I know it's not that many hours. I know some people work 2 jobs, and there's many different factors involved. For example, when I first got out of college, I was 22 years old. I never had a desk job per se, right, for the corporate-based world, but I did for about 4 months or so. And so during those 4 months at 22 years old, I was going to a desk job during the day from, let's say, 8 o'clock or 8:30 to 5 o'clock at night. And then when that job ended, then I went to a gym that I was doing personal training and nutrition at. So then I worked there until close, which was somewhere around 9 to 10 o'clock. And actually, my shift got over at 9, and then I ended up working out from 9 to 10 because that's the time that I had. And then after that, I would eat on the car ride home, and I'd get to bed by 11:30, and I'd wake up at 6 o'clock or so, 6:30, and do it all over again because I had a commute from, at that time, it was Medford, Massachusetts, into Boston. And then after that, it would eventually be, I would move to Providence, back to Providence, where I went to undergrad. And then I would go back to Boston by train. So I always had, these big commutes. So I understand that part of it. But even when I was working 2 jobs and all of these different things, I still had the ability to do something when I first woke up. I still had the ability to do something on my commute to each one of those jobs. So basically, there's a commute to the first job, there's a commute to the second job, and then there was the commute home. Now, there wasn't a whole lot of time when I got home or really even when I woke up because I was trying to maximize my sleep as well. Because even then, I knew I needed my sleep, but yet I was working 2 jobs. How was I going to be able to sleep more than maybe 7 hours a night, right? So kind of had to make every second count. And again, there are many people in this position, and some people obviously even more hardships because they have a family and they work a job or 2 jobs or whatever it might be. At least back then, it was just my girlfriend at the time and now wife, and we're both just trying to do our thing and make life work, and then we have the weekends together. So I get it, I understand it, but even back then, I had some time, and I did try to use that time to the best of my ability because within a month of this corporate-based job, I knew that it wasn't for me. I just knew that I was meant to be working with people, teaching the best of my ability, and not in an office. It just, again, that's okay for some people. It just wasn't right for me. And when you know, you know. And I knew early, and so luckily for me, by 22, after a few months, I had fully transitioned out to nutrition and fitness, and I was very happy about that. And the days were just as long, to be honest, because at that point I'd moved to Providence, where my wife was, and now I was commuting an hour and a half each way. And so I would drive to the train station, and then I would take the train into Boston, and then I would walk about a mile to the really beautiful facility that had opened, that I was very, very fortunate and lucky enough to be hired at. And again, I don't believe in luck, but there's good fortune, right? And I put myself in the position, and I did the phone interview, the 2 interviews, and I just tried to put my best foot forward. And again, I was fortunate enough to be able to get that job, because that was really the catalyst to meeting the clients who would then, not even knowing, mentor me on life. I would it was almost like, yes, they were paying me for services, but I was learning from them because I asked a lot of questions. I was 22 years old, and I think most people, and they were very successful, are happy to kind of share their life with other people, and they were so successful. I love to hear about that, because I was not. And so, again, I had a lot of dreams as a kid, but I was only a kid, and I didn't know how the world worked. I didn't know how all of this worked. Again, I'm driving my, I don't even know what it was, Chevy Corsica or something like that, to the train station, taking the commuter rail. Sometimes it was late, sometimes it was early, sometimes it would be snowing, sometimes the train would be delayed, and that was my life. And I would run to catch the train, and I didn't have it all together, not even by close. But I started to look at the time management and the management of these people had over their lives. And they would fly in and out, they would be making meetings, they would be running meetings, they would be like, they seemed put together. And again, like, I wasn't. I showed up at work, and yes, I had my client schedule, all that. I could do that. But I didn't know the intricacies. And so what I began to do was study them. Again, and I read a lot. So I used to read a lot, mostly on health. And back then, even psychology. I started to read a lot about psychology because my wife, her undergrad is in psychology. And so I would read her textbooks, to be honest with you. I know that's very strange, but I would enjoy it. And I would read about social psychology, and I would read about health psychology. And I was doing that knowing what it would lead to, but simply trying to learn more about myself and hopefully more about others, and more that I could teach to clients. And then I began to learn this other part of it, which was more of the career and time management and the next process, the next development of me. And what I realized was that during my downtime when I wasn't with clients, I could have been out with some of my friends from this, again, I don't even like to call it a gym, because it was this 4 seasons of a gym. It was very high end. It was beautiful. Again, like I was a little out of place there, that's for sure. But again, I learned how to belong, right? I learned how to belong. That's what I was trying to do. And so many of us are, right? Like we move out of our comfort zone, and this was way out of my comfort zone, working with very successful people. I didn't know how to speak properly. I didn't know how to act properly. And I would just try to take cues as to what to do. And I would watch the other personal trainers who are much more advanced in terms of experience and knowledge and age than I was. I mean, there was many, I'd never met personal trainers in their 40s and 50s before. And yet here I was with other personal trainers, some in their 20s, some in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. And even, believe it or not, early 60s. And I was like, whoa, I didn't even know that this existed. Because again, like coming from pretty small locations and just fortunate and happy enough to be here. And I would learn. And I would mostly just listen and observe. And so what I learned after a while was, sure, I could go out for like a late lunch after appointments were over with some friends. I could go shop for some sneakers with some buddies. I could do all sorts of different things, which was not the best use of my time. And so when I actually found, because I didn't have my car, I took the train, when I actually found a little corner to do my reading, or I'd find a cafe and do some reading there, or I'd start to order some of these Nightingale Conant-based audio CDs and start to listen to people like a Jay Abraham or Earl Nightingale or a Zig Ziglar or a Jim Rohn, I started to realize, well, like there's more to life than what I'm doing right now. Meaning I get to choose my career, but then it's how I decide to live my career and my life. Well, there's a whole lot of balance that needs to be taken into account. And there's an integration that needs to happen. So I started to plan my day a little bit better. And this actually is life management. It's not just time management. Because again, and I'll link up the podcast on this, if you think about it, We all have about 16 hours of our day. If we're in bed for about 8 hours or so, let's do easy math. That's 16 hours a day right out of our 24 hours. So we kind of all start with 16 hours or so. But let's just say you take out 8 hours for work, and then let's just say you take out an hour on each end for commute, whether it's driving your kids to school, whatever it might be. Well, that's 10 hours. So if I subtract 10 hours from my 16, I have about 6 hours left. And I really go in depth on this podcast. So again, I'll link that up today at stephencabral.com/1711 for that previous podcast. But and then again, when you look at me, I didn't have 6 hours. I basically had 5 because I had an hour and a half commute on each side and maybe even a little bit more with actually getting to the train station. But regardless, what I did was I used that time to the best of my ability. So it was very strange. But back then, since I didn't know too much about the world, I used to read this small paper that was given out for free. It was called a Metro. And that was about right when I started working at this particular facility. So I'd have plenty of time on the train. So I would actually read that on the way in. And I would read it on the way in, and then it would give me something kind of worldly to talk about with my clients who were very successful because, again, like I didn't have anything to really offer or talk about. I didn't know about anything except nutrition, the diseases I was dealing with, which I didn't really want to talk about with anybody, and basically personal training, right? So I knew about health and fitness. That's what I was studying, and that's what I lived. I ate, I breathed. I mean, I made my own food, all of those things. I never went out really. I made it Tupperware containers, all that stuff. So I did my workouts, I trained clients, and I ate my food. The only other thing that I did was that I also then began to read and study. So I would read this paper as something to then be able to talk about with clients. And so they saw me a little bit differently, like, oh, you actually follow what's going on in the world. And so, they found that a little bit interesting. And then I asked certain questions about what does this actually mean? Like, what is going on? And I just wanted their opinion. I thought, again, 22, I'm talking to people that are 42 and 52 and 62, and I wanted their opinion. I wanted to know. I figure, they must have all the answers. So I would ask them. And then I also started to listen to, back then it was CDs in my car. So I'd pop in these Jim Rohns, these Zig Ziglars, all these different things. And I would begin to be mentored by all of these people that I would never meet. And some of them weren't even alive at that time. But they used to call that a rolling university. It was a beautiful term. I don't know who came up with that. Maybe it was Zig Ziglar or Jim Rohn. That I give a lot of credit to both of those people. But basically, and Bob Proctor was another person. So I would listen to those in my rolling university, which essentially was my Chevy Corsica, and then eventually I think it turned into a Honda Accord. And so I'm driving to the train station. I'm listening to these. That takes about 30 minutes, 35 minutes. So I'd be able to get through, one of these CDs, and that was great. And so I'd read the paper on the way in, talk with clients. I'd get an education. And then I would actually read during the day my textbooks on psychology, physiology for exercise, nutrition, disease, whatever it might be. And then on the way home, because I had still a train ride, I would read a book. So that would be like the book I was reading. And it could be on life. It could be on self-improvement. It could be on health, nutrition, you name it. And then I would get in my car and I would pop on the rest of those CDs. And it was instead of listening to a sports talk radio, which again, still sometimes I did that, or music. And again, like luckily for me, maybe I was just never big into music. And I know that, again, that's probably strange. But when people ask, how did you read so many books? And I don't believe that you read 3,000 plus books. That's what I did with my time. And I had a goal to be able to read essentially a book a day. So the first books that I read was how to read more books, how to read faster, because I knew that by accumulating knowledge, I was going to be able to better figure out at a faster rate how I would better live my life and accomplish my goals, which for me was, I always thought about what would an ideal life look like? What would abundance look like on all levels? And that's simply what I was trying to achieve. And really what I meant by that is I think what most of us want, and that's happiness. I wanted to be at peace. I wanted to be happy. And I wasn't at that age. And certainly previous to that in life, I didn't know why, but I had a more of a temper, and I was more angry, and all of these different things, right? So I've talked about those on the show. So it was deep exploration, and of course I needed to heal my body, and I would still have a number of years before I would finally meet my mentor, which by the way would never have happened had I not read many Ayurvedic books and then went on to her book. But again, what I'm trying to share with you is this. is that we have these hours in our day, and no, they do not have to be dedicated to reading, but they should be dedicated to the pursuit of whatever it is that you're looking for your life to become. Because your life does not ever arrive at that destination all in one day. Your life arrives at the destination you are looking to achieve very slowly and gradually over a period of weeks, months, and most likely years. And it happens so gradually sometimes that you didn't even know that it happened. And then you're thinking about it one day and you're like, oh, I'm already here. I have arrived. Yet you didn't know it because it happened so sequentially with so many different events happening that there it is. I've shared the story before about me opening my first wellness center. And it actually happened by me, and I'm not going to go through all of that again today, but actually being in the exact building that I visualized every day walking by it. Not only that, and this is a 450,000 square foot building with about 16 floors or so, I believe. And I was on the exact floor in the exact window that I looked at every day as I visualized it, and there was already a tenant in there. So how does that happen? And you might look like, well, that just happened overnight. No. It was a process of me reading when I was 18, 19, 20, 21, all during college, continuing with that, fostering this area of growth, wanting to learn first nutrition and supplementation and exercise, and then beginning to move more into integrative health. And the only way that happened was me beginning to manage my life. And the way that we do that is by first getting crystal clear on what it is that we do want. For me, it was a little bit backwards. I realized what I didn't want. I didn't want to be unhappy. I didn't want to be sick. I didn't want to be tired. I didn't want to be angry. I didn't want to have brain fog. I didn't want my feet to hurt every single day when I was working on that gym floor, because they did. Every day I was exhausted because I was dealing with Addisons disease and POTS and all sorts of issues that many of you have heard me speak about before. And I didn't want that anymore. And I would get pneumonia every weekend. And again, I was not a healthy individual, and I didn't know why. So what I focused on was I want the opposite of that. So I started to focus on what I do want. And in order to achieve that, I realized that I needed more knowledge and more education. And that's what most people need. The only reason you haven't achieved your goal, yes, there's a time factor to it, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But the only reason you haven't achieved your goal is you haven't found out what it is that you need to know in order to achieve that goal. And sometimes it's because you're not clear enough on what it is that you need to know. So, for example, I didn't know at the time, in my early 20s, that I needed to learn about what are called Ayurvedic doshas. And I needed to learn about toxicity. I didn't know about that. So I couldn't learn those things without actually knowing that they existed, which is why I tell people so much: a mentor, a coach, a personal trainer, a naturopathic doctor, an integrative health practitioner, whoever it might be, they can shorten that learning curve. For me, it was books. When you're making $6 to $8 an hour, you can't sometimes afford a $100 an hour coach or whatever it might be. But you can read books. You can absolutely read books. You can search out the knowledge there. And it's easier. It's now easier 20 years later than it was back when I was searching for this information. So first we get crystal clear. Then we have to just acknowledge that there's going to be a little bit of work required from us. And that's not a bad thing, because it allows us to change who we are, which is what we need to do, in order to get a different result. And then after that, we have to look at our life. And I would love for you to listen to my show on this, because sometimes healing and achieving our goals is much more of a subtractive process than an additive process. We'll try to link up that show today as well. Because so much of the time when we're trying to get well or we're trying to achieve our goals, we're always trying to do more. And yes, doing more can help if you're doing the right things. But we're doing more at the sake, though, of not removing. And one of the best ways to get back some of that time in order to be able to work on your goals, even if it's only for 30 minutes to 60 minutes a day, you might be saying, well, I don't have 6 hours. I understand. I get it. But I bet you can wake up 30 minutes earlier and go to bed 30 minutes earlier. I really think that you can. So now you gain 30 minutes every morning, right? You just switched your bedtime just a bit. So you get 30 minutes more every morning. What could you do in 30 minutes? Well, it might not seem like that much, but you could definitely walk your 10,000 steps or get to it. You could definitely meal prep for the day. You could definitely get in a workout. You could definitely work on meditation. You could definitely work on 30 minutes of reading. That's 30 minutes of reading. That's 10 pages right there. Well, if you're at that pace every day, that's a book a month. That's 300 pages a month. That's 12 books a year. Looking at what you need to figure out, you'll be able to figure that out in a year for sure because you'll see similarities. And so, no, it doesn't seem like that much in a day, but for sure it's going to add up over the course of weeks and months, right? So 30 minutes, that's what, 3.5 hours or so a week. Let's say that's 12 hours or so a month. We're looking at 140, 150 hours. Like that's a good amount of time over a year. You're going to be able to make a dent in your goals. And I'll also tell you this, once you get started, you'll want to do more. You'll find more time. You'll find that you're able to go for a walk during lunch. You're able to sneak out of work to get in a workout. You're able to read that book you're able to do the online certification during a break, whatever it might be. And so what happens is, I really believe, yes, time management matters. You need to schedule your day because the day will get away from you, right? It absolutely will. When people look at my schedule, they say, this is insane, this is ridiculous, it's way too scheduled. I get it. It's not for everybody. It works for me, though. Because at the end of the day, I can say to myself, I didn't get everything done that I wanted to, but there was no more time to put it in. So I'm never mad. I'm never upset because there was no more time. So then I figure out, is it a priority? Because if it's a priority, well, then I can make sure that it's scheduled and then it makes its way on the schedule. And it gives me a lot of freedom because I just need to follow the plan for my day. And then the plan, if executed, I don't need to worry about my goals because my goals will eventually come true because I'm simply executing on the formula, the blueprint, the plan, whatever you'd like to call it. And that's really what it is. I don't want my mind to have to do too much work. But the time management, which I just spoke about there, only comes once you get the life management. Once you realize you need to get crystal clear, you need to start to incorporate more minutes in your day to work on yourself, not just on your job, your family, whatever it might be, that it's okay to take a little time for yourself. And then when you do that, it will begin to multiply because you're going to start to see the results roll in. That's going to make you excited. All those little wins start to add up. And you're going to want more. That's what I did. I mean, again, I started with just the train ride in. That was it. And then I'm going to do more. And all of a sudden, I started to switch off the sports talk radio and listen to all these different CDs, right? And now it's even easier because you can hook up your iPhone or whatever it might be, and you can just play whatever you want right through that. So there is no limit there. I'm telling you right now, there is no limit to what you can achieve. As they say, whatever the mind can conceive and you believe, you will achieve. And that is the truth. And even that takes a little bit of time to sink in. So again, we're all on this journey together. We absolutely are. If I can ever help, do let me know. I appreciate each and every single one of you for tuning in, for your reviews and your comments. I absolutely love them all. So thank you so much. And of course, if this podcast was helpful, please do feel free to share it with anyone else you believe it could serve.